Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here's your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Good morning, everyone. Can you believe it's September already? This is amazing. But at any rate, welcome back to another Sunday morning for Faith in Our Hometown. I'm so happy that you joined us this morning. I've got a new guest, been in our area a little over a year, and that is Reverend Marsha West-Eichler, who is the lead pastor at First United Methodist, so one of my neighbors here in the downtown area. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the downtown area, talking about what churches are like in those areas of cities like ours, like Joplin, and we're going to be also talking a little bit about what her first year's been like and how she finds the Joplin community, because it always fascinates me when people move in here from somewhere else. So we're going to be talking about those things and a little bit more right after this Mercy Minute. So go ahead and fill your coffee cup, stick around, and we're going to be right back to talk to Reverend Marsha West-Eichler, who's the pastor at First United Methodist.
Greetings of mercy to you. My name is Anna Nichols. I am a Sister of Mercy and currently the leader of Heritage and Spirituality at Mercy International Association. I love the fact that sisters throughout time have gone where they have been called to go, and they have often picked up ministries that they never intended to pick up. 25 years ago, there were 22,000 Sisters of Mercy globally. Today we're down to about 6,200 with Sister Rock and some of the others. But despite the fact there are 6,500 or 6,200 sisters left, there is an amazing number of women and men of mercy who are working alongside us, and that continues to expand, and for me that is incredibly exciting. So as far as National Catholic Sisters Week, I really look at the legacy that they have passed on and the fact that so many women, men, young people are living mercy today. That really is for me what's significant.
Well, again, welcome back for another episode of Faith in Our Hometown. My guest this morning, Marsha West-Eichler, who's the pastor at Joplin, First United Methodist Church. And so, Sarah, you've been here like just a year, and this is the first time we're actually getting together and talking and meeting. So my apologies for not being more hospitable in the downtown area. But welcome. So tell us a little bit about yourself, since you're new to the area.
Well, I am from Kansas City, Missouri, originally, and entered ministry from a church there and served as an associate there, and then took an appointment in Washington, Missouri. We're appointed by our bishop, and so that means that I can go any place in the state of the Missouri that the bishop asks.
Yeah, when I was first ordained, you guys are east and west, and now you're just
all
like one
we're
big...
all part of one conference together. Yeah. So Washington is just outside the St. Louis area, about an hour from downtown St. Louis.
I know it well. It's actually a Catholic ghetto.
There are a lot of Catholics in Washington, which I came to know and appreciate.
Well, it's good. I'm glad they were behaving. Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it was a great community to be in. So I served there for 6 years, and then came to Joplin a year ago. And so it's beginning to feel like home.
Good.
I'm beginning to know that it is home, because I go to the grocery store and I see people I know and go out to eat. And so and we really love the community, my husband and I do.
Well, our churches are kind of twins, because they kind of match, made out of the same Carthage granite, and the limestone. So we're part of that. We got that gray look downtown. Which means that we were of the same era. Okay, so what year were you guys founded?
That church, the building that we're in now, was built in 1905, but the church traces its roots to Harris Joplin, and so the earliest remnants of that church go back to 1839. Yeah. So the actual formal organization of the church occurred later than that at a couple of other sites. I've been told the church started in a saloon.
Oh, there's a lot of stories like that in Joplin.
Probably, not unusual. And then moved to 2 other sites before coming to 4th and Byers.
Yeah. So we were also built in 1905. Okay, so the church was, beginning, so although our roots were a little later than that, because there were Catholics in Joplin for a long time before they finally got enough of them and organized to do that. So we kind of measure back to the first mass in Joplin, even though we didn't have a resident pastor at that point in time, was 1877.
Yeah, so probably,
So
and I think that's probably true for us, very
Yeah.
similar kind of background. So it's very interesting for me. The church I served in Washington, also a long heritage in that community, over 160 years, so some similarities.
Sure.
But it's interesting always to come to a new community, and for me, this is the most urban setting that I've been in. So to be in a downtown church, it's just a different setting. Church I served in Kansas City was suburban. That's got its own
Different
feel.
feel, right.
Washington was a small town. That community,
Rural, yeah.
beyond that, it's about 26,000 people in the surrounding area. So this is quite different from that. And I have to say, I'm still learning it, what it's like to be a church in that kind of a context, and to learn the neighborhood and to think about how to do ministry with the neighbors.
Yeah.
And so it's a great experience. It's a challenging experience to understand that context.
Yeah, so you're going into your second year, and I'm now going into my 14th year. Okay, so this is now my longest stint anywhere. But I keep changing jobs and getting it all reconfigured all the time. So I've not been 14 years full time here. I've had all kinds of other things to go along with. But that downtown area is very interesting because it's not just a ministry to the people who come there to go to church, but it's a ministry to the area.
Absolutely.
And that's just a whole different ball game. Sitting down there in that, some people, of course, everybody says, oh, you live in the hood. Well, not really. I mean, it is a downtown area, but it's not, I don't think it's the hood, but it is, the clientele's different. We got a lot of folks that aren't really connected to the church, but who are looking for some, assistance or some friendship or just a place to be.
Absolutely.
We get a lot of that downtown.
Right. And I think often when we talk about who is our neighbor, we think about that in several different ways. And we think about our neighbor being anyone who lives close to us in whatever neighborhood we reside. And many of the people, as you said, who attend our church may not reside downtown, although more and more I'm seeing people who do walk to church and live somewhere in that area close enough that they could do that. So there are those that we live directly next door to, and there are those who live directly next door to the church as well. And sometimes those are different things. Yeah. So learning that, and I think one of the challenges you mentioned, the way our buildings were built, yours and ours, and sometimes those can be really intimidating to our direct neighbors.
Yes, the big edifice.
Yeah, and I think that's a piece for us as we think about the ministry, a historic church in a setting like that. What's the ministry that God calls us to today?
Right.
And some of that ministry occurs in our building, and an awful lot of it is going to occur in our neighborhood. And so we've been trying to do more of that, certainly this summer and moving into the fall, just getting out and walking our neighborhood and prayer walking our neighborhood, meaning, just walking a block and praying for the people that we see, whether or not they know that, but just being intentional about trying to meet people and listen and hear and collaborate within the neighborhood.
One of the things I love about one of my associates, Father Chaz, Chaz will a lot of times walk and pray in the neighborhood. Now, most people are not going to know he's a priest or what he's doing, but I love the fact that he's just kind of walking in the streets of the neighborhood, just praying for everybody as he goes along. Yeah. They don't have to know who he is, but we're right down there praying for everybody while we're doing it. And I think that's one of the kind of the neat things that I appreciate about the fact that he does his prayers that way, that he'll walk the neighborhood as he does it, which I think is kind of cool.
And that was one of the things that excited me about coming to this setting where I was in Washington. We were on 10 acres. We sat on the edge of town. There was no activity around there unless there was a church event there. Yeah. This is right in the heart of that. All you have to do is walk outside the door.
Oh, yeah.
And there's
Stuff
activity
going on.
and there's people walking around and there's someone to talk to. So I really appreciate that about this setting.
Yeah, I'm sure that First United Methodist was kind of like St. Peter's. They were so in the early 1900s. They were so trying to get the city to become Now, I still think it's kind of the Wild West, but they were so trying to get the city to become more family friendly and, and to do all that stuff that I love the fact that all the businessmen of the area, whether they were Catholic or Methodist or whatever, they all had this vested interest in making sure that we had strong church communities. And so they helped. I mean, our church was donated to by people of so many different denominations because they just wanted to make sure that we had a good Catholic church in town.
Right.
And I'm sure the same thing was true for First United Methodist. I love the fact that in that area, they were just trying to build up and strengthen the infrastructure of the city, and they knew that churches were part of it. And that to me is one of the cool pieces about the history of Joplin that I learned when I came here many years ago.
And I think it's part of our calling today, is how do we collaborate, how do we work together so that we have a vital community and that we strengthen our neighborhoods and we bring health to that area. And so we hope that we're doing that by being in ministry there.
And so do we. I mean, it is a challenge because again, you just, and again, and this is nothing. This is so typical of everywhere. This is not, and so I don't want anybody to hear me complaining about this at all. But it is so common that when you have another community that's newer and shinier, that's on the more on the periphery, that it's out in the the prettier or more manicured area. A lot of times people just say, well, that makes it it makes it a little more attractive or easier to go to, or people sometimes fear the neighborhood, safety and all that kind of good stuff. But I just got to tell you, it adds such a richness being in an area where you've got different socioeconomic backgrounds of everybody. So we have people come to our church that are very, very well off financially and economically. Not a worry in the world financially. But we've also got folks there that have very little. And they come together in one spot to be together and to pray.
Yeah, and what a great experience. And we do as well. We may have someone sitting next to someone who drove there and someone who's experiencing homelessness, worshiping side by side together.
Absolutely.
And that's a powerful experience.
Well, and again, that folks don't even know it. And then every once in a while someone comes and says, Father, did you know that so-and-so, I'm just like, well, yeah, I kind of knew that, that they were one of our, people from the neighborhood that really, they struggle a little bit, but yeah. So can we do something for, I said, well, you can do anything out of friendship that you want, if you know something. But I said, but remember, everybody's also got, their pride and, and again, they're making this. So it's always interesting because when you mix with somebody else, it changes, the relationship changes everything.
Absolutely. And I think relationship is what is key. I think that's what we're trying to build on now. We've done lots of things mission related where we send things in support of the agencies in our area, but to actually get to know someone face to face, you understand the context of what's happening with them in a whole different way.
Yeah, and I think it makes it. I just think it makes it richer. I love that part about being in a downtown church, and again, not picking on any of the folks on the more on the periphery of some of the newer areas. But we certainly have a richness because of where we are, of being that downtown area that I don't think the others understand what a richness it is because they just don't get to experience it the same way that we do, which is a true blessing. So my guest this morning, Reverend Marsha West-Eichler, who is the pastor at First United Methodist, and so we are going to be back after a quick break. We're talking about what life is like in a downtown church. And we might shift things a little bit here in the second half, so I'm going to leave that as a surprise. So stick around, refresh your coffee. We're going to be back after a real quick break, so don't go away very long.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
Marsha, thanks so much for joining me this morning for a conversation. It's always good to get to know the neighbors, and like I said, it's been that we've had a whole year without
I'll
actually
share the
bumping
blame.
elbows. That's all right. Don't worry about it. So let me take it. I've been here longer. That'd be my hospitable moment. There we go. I know that, like, say, for example, our campus ministry groups do some things together. And so Evan, one of your campus ministry people, he was just so excited when, you were coming and all that stuff. And, my intentions were good, but you know how life goes. Life and ministry just carry us along. And sometimes we're all along for the ride. So, impressions from your first year. Just share a little, what do you see as the exciting parts, and what do you see as some of the challenge for you guys at First United Methodist?
Joplin is a great community to live in. The way I describe it to people, it's an easy place to be. It's easy to get around. Amenities are here that you want to do, and close to other, Kansas City, Tulsa, Springfield, whatever. So from a personal standpoint, and also people have been very warm and gracious and welcoming. And so that's been great. For me, from a ministry standpoint, it's continuing to understand that downtown context, and being in a church that has such a strong legacy. What does God call us to do now? And so we come out of a really rich tradition where we've had very strong music. We're in a historical setting, and we have two different worship styles. We have a classical service with the organ and piano, and that's always been a strength and a very strong choir. We have a modern worship team as well with the band, and so just understanding what worship and what ministry looks like in that downtown location with that mix of what we offer and how we connect in the neighborhood. One of the things that we're really trying to lean into is, and some of this is from our conference initiative, but we understand helping children learn to read is such a significant aspect in their development and helps people to excel later in life. And so while we have a tendency to try to feed a lot of people, we even do a huge Thanksgiving meal that our church hosts, we're trying to be more intentional in what we do as we relate to the neighborhood. For example, this summer we did a program where we provided lunch every Wednesday with the Neighborhood Lifehouse, which is just about 5 or 6 blocks from where we are. Collaboration every Wednesday for kids and families that wanted to come and have lunch, but we gave a book to every child every week. And so just trying to think about our partnership that we do with McKinley Elementary. How can we be helping those kids in a more significant way, and listening to them read, helping them read, providing books. So that's one piece that we can see where we can really make a difference. And again, I think the big thing is the relational aspect of really getting to know people and not just doing ministry to people in our neighborhood, but how do we do that more collaborative? How do we do it with? So that's a learning, but I really still feel like I'm trying to understand and learn that context and those areas. One of the other United Methodist pastors that's on the other end of Byers at Byers Avenue, we've identified that we want to collaborate on our day camp next year.
Oh, fun.
And so we've been hosting something like that for the last 3 years. And so we've just been talking together, what would that look like? Well, there's about 17 blocks between us, or something like that, 13 blocks or whatever. What would that look like if we just were very intentional about trying to be collaborative along Byers Avenue? And how might we make a difference in the health and vitality of Joplin just by doing that? And certainly in our, connection with one another. We're not in competition with one another.
I love it when I can work with people who feel the same way that I do in that regard, because again, we've all got our own thing, we've all got our own style, we've all got our way to go out doing things. But if we were all just our best, if we were all just our best for God, whether we're Jewish or, go to the synagogue or the mosque or, wherever we happen to be, if we're all trying to be our best, I think that's what will continue to pull Joplin together in the same way that Joplin has developed the spirit that it is now.
And there's a huge spirit of resilience and a desire to to work together, and so to build on that, absolutely.
Absolutely, I agree with you wholeheartedly. Let me shift gears a little bit and ask you another question, because again, I don't know whether this is a challenge or whether it's not a challenge. If it's not, then we won't talk about it. We'll move on to something else. But you're the first female lead pastor. I mean, you've certainly had a strong, women in leadership.
Absolutely.
Like every time, we're never going to have a female pastor, at least not not in the foreseeable future, okay, unless God really changes some things, in a major way. But again, strong female leadership, even though, the pastor is male. But you're the first female pastor of, the downtown congregation, the old Methodist Church, first United Methodist Church.
Right.
Was that a tough thing for anybody?
I have to say, I've been told that when it was announced, there was just a silence in the room. I wasn't present, but when they were told who would be coming, but I have been received very graciously. I have to say that knowing that and coming, I was a little anxious about it.
Mm-hmm. Well,
and we have a long tradition within Methodism of women preaching pre-Revolutionary War time. We haven't ordained women. We started ordaining women in the 1950s, but still a long tradition. But one thing that was very helpful for me, one of my district superintendents, that's our direct supervisor as clergy, she is African American and female. And I was talking to her about preparing for this move, and she said, I have had conversations with people, and I'll say, the two things I can't change are my race and my gender. Mm-hmm. And I can do a lot of other things, but I can't change that. And that gave me some ease of there's nothing that I can do about this that's going to change it. And I need to try to be myself. And even though I had some anxiety coming in to the position, as soon as I started meeting people, I came out of my first meeting, and after the fact, I thought, within 5 minutes, I was just who I am, and they were accepting of that, and it was fine. But it is, it weighed on me a little bit. The church I served in Washington, I was the third woman in a long history, a history of 160 plus years there, but that way had already been paved for me. And I'm very thankful for the women and men who've been role models for me. So I had that as a youth and young adult. I saw that, and I think that is something so important in our churches, that people hear male and female voices and very diverse voices. It helps people see themselves and the way they can use their gifts. And so I see the value in that, and I'm so thankful for the people who modeled that for me.
Well, every once in a while, I used to train our seminarians, and every once in a while, seminarians would, they'd start to give a very rote or traditional answer as to why we don't ordain women. And again, I can't change that in the church, even if I wanted to. I mean, it's just who we are and those kinds of things. We just don't feel like we're free to do that. But where they'd always get on dangerous ground with me is when they start saying, well, people can't, a woman can't represent Jesus as well as a male can. And I'm just like, wait a minute, stop. You tell me that your mom was not an image of Jesus to you. You tell me that your grandma was not an image of Jesus to you. And then maybe I'll go there with some of that. Now, we can still say all of our reasons for why we're not going to go there to that other thing. But don't be telling me that you didn't recognize the image of Jesus in the women in your life, because if you do, I hope they just come right over here and snatch you bald-headed, because it's just like, how would you not? Of course they've got to recognize that. And I just say, do the arguments, do the good ones, but for goodness sake, don't get out there on some area that, where you're out on the limb and you're sawing yourself off, because again, I look at my own congregation and I think about the images of Jesus that I see, and I see them just as easy in the women as I do in the men.
And I think those gifts, sometimes people will say maybe some gifts are more represented in men than in women. And actually, I think I don't find that to be true. I just find that diversity and those multiple voices are really helpful.
It is helpful.
And I have to say that I haven't really encountered a lot of resistance, at least not to my face. I mean, I know, and other colleagues have said, those who don't think that they can go along with a female pastor usually walk out before you walk in. Mm-hmm. And I know that there was a little of that, but that occurs when any new person
comes in, right?
Regardless of gender. So, and I have to say that people have been very supportive and very encouraging and open. And so it's been a good experience.
Well,
for
I
me.
will tell you, I was sitting at one of the local Mexican restaurants over by the university when the week that it was announced that you were coming. And the Methodist group and the Catholic group were getting together, and we were having a little bar hopping with Father Jay, is what we call it, that other thing. And some of the people in the group were talking about that it was announced that you were coming, and I just kind of sat back and said, well, how do you think that's going to work? And I will tell you, in the typical way that young adults can often do, is they're just kind of like, well, it's going to be a little bit different, but we're sure going to try it because, this is what's going to happen, and it's been done, and she's coming, and there you have it. Yeah. So I'm happy to report that in that year since, all the reports have also been good that just said, it's been a good thing, and we're finding her helpful to the whole thing. Good. So I just want to pass that on to you.
And I know it's different. I recognize how different the context is.
Sure.
If you've never had that. Our bishop, who is male, grew up in a church with a female pastor, and so he said he didn't know any different. So it's what we've been exposed to. Yeah.
Well, my guest this morning, Reverend Marsha West-Eichler, who is the pastor at First United Methodist here in Joplin. We're going to be right back after this Mercy Minute.
Lung cancer is the leading cause of cancer deaths in the U.S., and now we have an effective tool to screen for it. A low-dose CT uses a lower amount of radiation than a standard chest CT.
Breathe in.
Better detailed pictures than a chest x-ray of small abnormal areas of the lung. A person must be between 55 to 77 years old, asymptomatic, which means they don't have any symptoms such as coughing up blood, chronic cough, shortness of breath, unusual weight loss, or any other worrisome symptoms. They must also be a current smoker or have quit within the past 15 years, also must have a 30-pack year history or more, which equates to smoking 1 pack a day for 30 years, or 2 packs a day for 15 years. People generally avoid these scans, possibly due to fear of what could be found. Like many other cancers, if we can detect lung cancer early, it could be very treatable and life-saving.
Well, again, we hope you've enjoyed our conversation this morning. My guest, Reverend Marsha West-Eichler, who is the pastor at First United Methodist, relatively new to the area, but survived her first year in Joplin and had many good things to say about our community. Let's continue to make sure that whoever comes to our community, be they a minister or just a new member who happens to move into the Joplin area, has the opportunity to understand that we do have a great community and that we do know how to work with each other and that we're going to continue to support each other in the ways that we can as we move forward together in faith. Okay? So we hope that you'll join us next week for another episode of Faith in Our Hometown. I hope you have a phenomenal Sunday and that your life continues to be blessed. Enjoy your weekend and come back again next week.
Thanks for watching. Faith in Our Hometown can be seen Sunday mornings at 6:30 and 9 a.m. on KSN. Brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.